there with President Biden on the campaign trail calling out Donald Trump for floating those cuts to Social Security. How the former president's walking that back tonight as he tries to delay his legal problems, too. Also new tonight, those dangerous winds knocking down power lines, sending trees, look at that, into houses, making travel messy for millions of us. We'll take you live to some of the airports with delays triggering big problems for spring break travel. Then an NBC News exclusive, the head of the NAACP telling black high school athletes to avoid the Florida Gators, not the animal, the team, how it fits into that state's culture wars. Plus, another exclusive in tonight's original, the first interview ever with Princess Diana's brother about the abuse he went through at school. And speaking of the royals, what is up with that picture of Kate Middleton? And why are we all suddenly Photoshop experts? And how did Kensington Palace so badly botch what was supposed to be the end to conspiracy theories about the princess's health? We are live from London with all of it a little bit later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight it is a split-screen campaign moment as the longest general election in a generation gets going for real. You're about to see President Biden on the campaign trail in New Hampshire, his first visit there in a couple years. He's slamming former President Trump and Republicans for suggesting that cuts to Social Security and Medicare are on the table. Look.
If anyone tries to cut Social Security, Medicare, or raise retirement age again, I will stop them. But the bottom line is he's still at it. I'm never going to allow that to happen.
So listen, let's be real about what this moment is for the president. A big week as he tries to prove his stamina by hitting swing states he's going to have to win to have a big election day in November. Part of this full court press, his cabinet crisscrossing the country over the next couple of weeks. All of it, you can see where they'll be. All of it's just 24 hours ahead of what we think will be the night that both he and Mr. Trump could clinch their party nominations. And Mr. Trump tonight, he's trying to keep himself out of court and maybe on the campaign trail a bit more with a new filing from his lawyers. They're looking to delay that New York State hush money trial coming up in 2 weeks until after the Supreme Court hears arguments on presidential immunity in April. So at least till after April, but we might not even know the answer to the court hearing until mid-June. The backdrop to all of it, new numbers after the State of the Union showing a three-way split on who Americans think will do a better job as president. A third of them say President Biden. A third of them say former President Trump. A third of them say, nope, neither. Garrett Haake is joining us now. And Garrett, let's start with the president going on offense, hitting Mr. Trump on entitlements to the point that you've got the Trump team kind of trying to, what do you want to call it, clarify, walk back, soften, pick your language.
Yeah, look, I think the Biden team feels like they can maybe move some of those 30% on the neither category back onto Team Biden by focusing on this issue of entitlements, which has always been a good political issue for Democrats, and one on which Donald Trump stepped on a proverbial rake today on CNBC, kind of openly musing about how he might cut or save money around Social Security and other entitlements. Let's listen to what he had to say and then explain what a mess it caused for him.
There is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also the theft and the bad management of entitlements, tremendous bad management of entitlements. There's tremendous amounts of things, numbers of things you can do.
The Trump campaign tried to clarify that those things and numbers and tremendous amounts of them were really about cutting waste and fraud. But Donald Trump's not provided any specific plan to do that in in any of his three presidential campaigns, nor did he address it as president. So it's kind of hard to know what exactly he was talking about. The Biden campaign's not interested in the nuance here. They see Donald Trump, Social Security, cuts, and they're going to go on the attack. We saw it from the president today, and I suspect we'll continue to see it, including from the White House, where they sort of try to stay out of things political, to follow various laws related to how White House staffers are supposed to handle this. But even a spokesperson at the White House today kind of taking a slender bite at the apple on this issue.
Fair, Garrett, considering how popular, right, Social Security is for folks. Part of this, too, as we stick with policy for a second here, has to do with some of the areas where there might be commonality between President Biden and former President Trump. And I know commonality is not a word that we talk about often between these two, but it also has a nexus to another beat that you cover, one of your other jobs, which is covering Congress. This idea that maybe something should be done about TikTok. As you know, it is wildly popular with younger folks and millennials, by the way, who make up a large portion of TikTok users. But politicians don't like it very much. Let me play what Mr. Trump had to say about this.
I could have banned TikTok. I had it banned just about. I could have gotten it done. But the thing I don't like is that without TikTok, you can make Facebook bigger. And I consider Facebook to be an enemy of the people.
It's an interesting shift from him on this, Garrett.
Yeah, it's funny, Hallie, because here you have Donald Trump, who first proposed banning TikTok, now saying he's not that sure he wants to do it, in part because he doesn't want to help Facebook, who he's sort of politically feuding with. Then you have Joe Biden, who's overseeing and said he would sign a TikTok ban, while his campaign is actively on TikTok, using it to reach young voters. So both of these men have conflicted stances about what's becoming the most popular social media app in the country, and where lawmakers in both parties seem poised to force this vote, which would either force divestment or a ban on TikTok, which everybody seems to sort of want for national security purposes, but also hate for their own individual purposes. It's a messy issue, Hallie, but again, Congress is arguably more united than either of the presidential candidates on this. How's that for a weird statement to say?
Yeah,
and they seem pretty clear on moving towards this vote on Wednesday.
That's an Earth 2 line right there, Garrett. From the political to the legal now for the former president, because there's been a flurry of activity late today, including this brand new interview from over on CNN with so-called Trump employee number 5, talking about conversations that he had with the special counsel on the classified documents case. To remind people, this is the one where the former president's accused of bringing these documents from the White House to his home at Mar-a-Lago, top secret documents, etc. First time we've heard from this person referenced in this indictment. Let me play a little bit of it.
For me, I'm just thinking, the former president, he has a lot of stuff he likes to lug around with him. I never would have thought it was anything like what we see now.
Classified documents.
Yeah, I mean.
So he says he didn't know. All those boxes, like boxes that we saw piled up in bathrooms at Mar-a-Lago and ballrooms, etc. Interesting. You can see some of the photos there. Interesting to hear somebody in the former president's, like, semi-inner circle come out and talk about this.
Yeah, this is incredibly rare, Hallie. I mean, we've known about these folks who, you know, individual 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We who've been covering this case have identified some of them along the way, but not this man, Brian Butler, who was basically a valet for the Trump organization, the actual organization that runs Mar-a-Lago. He started a car service for people who were coming and going. And in his interview with CNN, he talks about Walt Nauta, the Trump aide, asking to borrow a large car in part to transport these boxes. So what we've seen in the past has been kind of unbending loyalty from Donald Trump's employees in this case, the kind of thing that has gotten some of them in legal trouble. Here, a break from that, testimony that's proven very important to investigators. Another big hearing in this case on Thursday. We'll see if this one is likely to move forward anytime soon, or if it gets bogged down in this immunity question into the summer or perhaps fall too, Hallie.
Garrett Hake, live for us, covering a lot that happened late today. Garrett, thank you so much. Appreciate it. To the deadly and dangerously strong winds now slamming the Northeast, taking out power, delaying flights. One man now dead in Pennsylvania after a huge tree came down on his house, just destroying it. You see the corner of his home there. Happened in the middle of the night. That's so scary. 2 other people were inside, but managed to get out safely. You've got trees down, too, all across the Northeast, falling onto cars, like you see here, onto power lines, leaving nearly 150,000 people in the dark. More than 50 million of us are now under wind alerts from Maine to North Carolina. And then look at some of these lines at the New York City airports, Newark and LaGuardia. Ground delays up to 2 hours now because of how intensely gusty it is. Meteorologist Bill Cairns is standing by for us, but I want to get first to Aaron McLaughlin, who's live for us at LaGuardia Airport. Timing here very bad. It is the start of the spring break week for a lot of people in the country, meaning a whole lot of travelers, and a lot of them now stuck because of these gusty winds.
Yeah, that's right. And for some of those travelers, Hallie, it has been a nauseating experience. One traveler at Newark Airport in New Jersey telling our affiliate WNBC that it was so bumpy on the flight due to the wind that he threw up. For other travelers, though, it was just an inconvenience, a delay. I have the numbers there you see on the screen, some 3,300 plus delays, 115 flight cancellations nationwide, that according to FlightAware. Take a listen to what some passengers here at LaGuardia had to say.
I just hope we make it home one time. I don't want to stay here another night.
It's delayed about an hour, and I'm pretty ready to get home, so it's a little inconvenient.
Now, all that wind pushed out this very wet winter system that struck the Northeast and other parts of the country over the weekend. And I was speaking to a state official about these extremes that we've been seeing play out all winter long, and she was attributing this to climate change. She said that we're seeing wetter winters, we're seeing warmer winters. In fact, this winter for the Northeast is among the top 10 all-time wettest winters. It's really incredible. And she said essentially what the takeaway here is that you need to be prepared to really listen to your local weather reports, to take the proper precautions for some of these extreme weather events. Now, this system is working its way out right now, Hallie, but it's being followed by warmer temperatures. We're talking temps potentially midweek in the 70s, which of course is good news for those spring break travelers, but again, an example of more extreme situations. Hallie.
Erin McLaughlin, thank you very much for that. Meteorologist Bill Cairns is joining us now. Okay, so talk us through it. A, the climate connection, and B, and maybe more imminently for people, when is it going to get a little less windy out there?
As soon as the sun sets, things will really start to come down. Most of our wind advisories will expire in the New York City area by 11 p.m. But even after the sun sets, we'll stop hearing about reports of like scaffolding falling or the horrible delays we have at the airports. And the reason we're having this is because it's not because of the storm. The storm that hit this weekend is now up in Nova Scotia, but it's the pressure gradient. So you have low pressure, you have high pressure, and in between, it's like a big it sucks. It just sucks all the wind and blows it down through. And that's why it's been so windy over the last 24 hours. These are all the wind advisories that are still up. And as I said, most of these will be expiring by about midnight or so. Let's see who the windiest is right now. We still got gusts in Albany up to 43. Boston's at 46, so that's not fun landing at Logan right now. New York is down to 35. Same with Philadelphia. That's a little better than it was earlier. Airports, still a mess. Newark's still about 2 hours delays. LaGuardia about an hour, hour and a half. No big reports of delays at other major airports, but they may have just canceled a lot of flights instead. And in case anyone was wondering what's next, Aaron mentioned those warm temperatures are heading to the east, but we do have a big wet snowstorm. It's one of those typical March storms where we could get up to a foot of snow in some areas near Denver, and it's going to be a heavy, wet snow with windy conditions. We're worried about power outages, roof collapse, stuff like that. But areas from Denver into the foothills into northern New Mexico and even a little section there of southern Utah. This will be the story as we go towards the middle of the week. This is more of a Thursday event for anyone traveling through the middle of the country. And Hallie, I think you'll like this. So you mentioned that 150,000 people without power. Well, my brother called me this afternoon. He was one of those 150,000 people, and he's a teacher at a high school, and their power went out, and the students weren't allowed to go home. So for 3 hours, they had to sit there and teach with no smart boards, no nothing, with all their students. So he gets my sympathy vote.
Oh, sounds a lot like 1999, Bill. Been there. No smartphones to teach in school. Got it. Okay, friend. Thank you.
Right.
Very interesting, though. Bill Cairns, thank you very much for that update. Appreciate it. Also, in the last couple of hours, some big red flags from the Secretary of State about what is happening in Haiti and the crisis there. Right now, as we speak, he's in Jamaica, praising leaders for taking the lead on what a source calls a growing sense of urgency about the Haitian crisis. Listen.
Today's meeting on Haiti, so critical, bringing CARICOM together, is testament to Jamaica's leadership in the hemisphere that we share, leadership at a critical moment for Haiti, but also a critical moment for all of us.
Remember, Haitian Prime Minister there faces calls to resign. He is now in Puerto Rico on U.S. soil, partly because of violent scenes like this one. This is from March 4th. Do you remember this? We covered it on the show, the attack at Haiti's airport with gangs overrunning the Haitian capital, including near the U.S. Embassy. You see the Haiti military beefing up their presence after now the U.S. military helped some embassy staff get out of the country. Marissa Parro is following this live for us from Miami. Secretary Blinken was clear. Some of our sources talking to our teams are clear. No boots on the ground. They're not helping any Haitians out of the country. Why draw those lines?
Well, I will say that the United States has been very, very careful with all of their phrasing, all of their rhetoric here. Hallie, you just said it yourself, no boots on the ground, being very careful to not give the impression that they're intervening. And that's really critical and important right now, because there's a fear that intervening or even giving the impression of doing so could make a really bad situation even worse. And so making it very clear that they are only adding to the security for that embassy. They only airlifted some of the non-essential embassy staff there, airlifted them out. And when we asked for further clarification, really making it clear that this was one operation, past tense, not saying anything about any future operations, Hallie. But I will add that we were hoping to take a listen to the meeting that we know was happening today. We don't know if it's over yet because, unfortunately, the feed that was going to allow us to get information cut out just as they were beginning that meeting, Hallie. So what you heard is pretty much all that we know in terms of that meeting so far.
And it's also hard to answer the question, Marissa, about where this all goes from here and whether we have a sense of that yet with so many questions and this crisis now lasting for weeks.
Yeah, and what I can tell you as someone who doesn't know yet what was discussed is that Caribbean nation leaders held this emergency meeting to, quote unquote, come up with a consensus on a resolution that would bring stability and relief to this crisis in Haiti. And they had invited other world leaders, of course, including the United States, who clearly accepted that offer. And this is a delicate situation because when we talk about what other nations can do, there are a lot of people, including humanitarian aid workers that I've spoken to, including Haitians on the ground here in Miami. We have one of the most significant Haitian populations in the country here. Many of them saying, please don't intervene. So, Hallie, I think that we're hearing from a lot of different voices here. It's a very difficult line to balance when you're asking and you're trying to figure out ways to help without intervening in a foreign crisis that you're not necessarily invited or wanted to intervene in. Hallie?
Marissa Parra, I know lots to watch, lots to cover from there. We'll see if we can find out more of what happened in that critical meeting. We'll be back with you, I know, next hour. Appreciate it. To New Jersey now, where the senator there, Bob Menendez, is gearing up to fight even more federal charges tonight after he and his wife pleaded not guilty to charges they obstructed the federal investigation against them. It's probably the last step before they go to trial in early May over allegations they accepted bribes in exchange for favors. Those new obstruction charges now coming from what prosecutors argue were the Menendez's efforts to lie about payments to buy a new Mercedes. Just one of the things investigators say were accepted as bribes. You can see some of them here. A majority of Menendez's Democratic colleagues in the Senate have called for him to resign, and that's significant, right? With the 2024 Senate map looking kind of like a toss-up right now. NBC's Tom Winter is following this for us. So, Tom, the Menendezes are basically saying these were loans, not a bribe. Walk us through that.
Right, Hallie. So federal prosecutors are saying quite the opposite. They're saying you invented this idea that these were loan repayments only after you learned that there was a federal criminal investigation into you when we searched your home and we started sending out subpoenas over half of northern New Jersey, it feels like. So in the course of that investigation, they said that they started to make some representations to their lawyers, who then went to federal prosecutors and say, hey, these are checks, and on these checks it says loan repayment. There's nothing illegal about that. Of course they're going to repay those loans. And federal prosecutors say, oh, not so fast. We've developed evidence. And then recently, with the guilty plea and cooperation of Jose Uribe, one of the businessmen who was charged alongside the Menendezes, in what he has told federal prosecutors happened, they now say out and out, these were bribes. And this idea that you tried to tell us that they were loan repayments, well, they argue that's obstruction of justice.
If people are like, well, wait a second, I thought that Bob Menendez was already facing charges, right? Today's arraignment is the third time that we're seeing more added onto this indictment, which Menendez called piling on. But how normal is that? What does that say about the changing scope of this investigation? Give us a gut check.
Right. I think actually the scope is kind of there, right? So the guardrails of where this investigation is, it's just that prosecutors are exploring the full length of this road of conduct they allege is illegal and is criminal. So in the course of their investigation, they've developed new information, more information. It's possible additional people have come forward. And then, of course, they've had a guilty plea and a cooperator. So is it unusual? Well, it is slightly unusual that we would have this. And you're looking at one of the photographs in one of the additional superseding indictments. On the other hand, you have a very active federal case. You have the FBI involved. And so it makes sense that other people would come forward and you would start to learn new information. I think the idea that they're flat out calling these bribes, Hallie, so often people say these politicians, they get all this money. People are paying them off. And, people come up to me when I'm outside of this building and just ask me about this. Those are typically legal. The idea that a sitting United States senator is allegedly receiving straight up gifts in cash in exchange for their official acts is something that prosecutors obviously are focusing on. And that's, I think, a big reason why you're seeing them really fully explore the level of conduct they say they have against Bob Menendez.
Tom Winter, thank you for that. We got a lot more to get to here on the show, including coming up a new sighting of Kate Middleton after she's apologizing for editing the picture you see here. What Kensington Palace is telling us or not saying about the original version. Plus, what Airbnb is going to do about security cameras inside properties. That's right, inside. Miami Beach officials sharing whether their breakup with spring break is working. Spoiler, if you've seen the pictures, you know the answer. We've got more on that in a couple of minutes. But first, speaking of pictures, Kate Middleton late today seen leaving Windsor Castle with her husband. You can see the shot. We're about to show it to you here. This is it. So that's obviously her in the back, like towards the back. She's kind of looking out the window. It looks like her head is turned. She's headed to what the palace calls a private appointment. If you zoom in, you can see she looks like maybe she's on her phone there. It's just hours after she apologized for editing the first official picture of her we've seen in months, meant to silence all the rumors about her, which essentially backfired, with the world's biggest news agencies putting out a notice, don't show the pictures because it looks manipulated. Why? Let's talk you through it, okay? And you've probably seen some of this coverage if you're on TikTok, if you're on Instagram, like you know this. The AP says there's an inconsistency right here on her daughter's left hand, like the photo looks a little bit wiggly there. The New York Times points to her hair and her zipper, that there's an alignment issue there on that piece of it. You can see it. It's zoomed in and brightened a little, so you can see that part of it. And then the edges of the tile back down where her son is standing look repeated, right? Looks manipulated. Kate says she experiments with photo editing, that's what happened here. She's sorry for any confusion it created, but Kensington Palace is telling NBC News it's not going to release the original. This is the statement here from Kate. You say, hope everyone celebrating had a happy Mother's Day. UK Mother's Day was yesterday. Matt Bradley's following all of it from outside Buckingham Palace. Okay. So welcome to the world where everybody in the universe is a Photoshop expert, right? But what's interesting here is that the actual experts in photography, the AP, Reuters, I think Getty, the AFP, they all are like, yeah, we can't actually put this out because it's been manipulated. Help us understand what in the world is going on here, because this felt like this wasn't just a swing and a miss from the royals to try to get this whole thing under control. This was like a swing and a stink bomb here. I mean, epic fail.
Yeah, I mean, you'd call this an own goal, right? I mean, the Royals really kind of just didn't work out. I mean, they tried, and we don't know exactly why they released that Mother's Day picture yesterday. Maybe it was just because it was Mother's Day, but it seemed like, and there probably was on some level, some sort of deliberate effort to try to calm down all of this crazy speculation that you and I talked about like 2 weeks ago. It was really hot back then, and it's even worse right now. Conspiracy theories, most of which, Hallie, are hilarious, but there was no real reason why the palace had to release this photo, because they had said at the time of Princess Kate's surgery all the way back in January that they weren't going to be giving regular updates on the princess. They weren't going to be constantly, bringing out new information, new photos, et cetera, et cetera. They could have just stuck to that. Instead, and when we last spoke about this, it was a similar dynamic. I was mentioning how it looked like the online just maelstrom of speculation and conspiracy theories actually forced the palace to make a statement. Now it looks like online speculators and online hobbyists kind of forced the palace to release a photo and then an apology. It almost looks as though Buckingham Palace behind me is now almost completely in the hands of the millions of the internet people who are just sleuthing and finding all of those little details that you just pointed out. I didn't see any of that stuff when I first looked at the picture. I mean, did you?
Well, here's the thing, though, Matt. Well, number one, let me tell you, my Photoshop abilities are very limited. But the thing about it is we're still not any closer to answers about what happened to Kate, how she's doing. The palace has said she will reappear, presumably, sometime around Easter, that would be her first public appearance. One of the things that you and I have talked about, and that I've talked about with some of your colleagues in our London bureau, is the way that the royals sometimes resonate more here in the U.S. than they do in the U.K., right? That there's a fascination with the royals from Americans. But in this instance, I want to pull it up. Look, it is still front page news where you are in the U.K. Talk to me about that, the impact that this is having where you're standing and the stakes of this here.
Yeah, I think that there is a big difference between the way that Brits follow the royals and the way that Americans follow the royals. And I haven't lived in America for quite a while, but it seems to me like there's maybe a perception in the U.S. that the royals actually maybe are governing the country, that they are people who do things in politics. They don't. And that is well understood here among the British public. They are simply blaring off the front pages of the tabloids, which are never shy about expressing their opinions on politicians, on royals, on celebrities, often salacious, often really misguided. So there is a popularity and a fascination with the royals here in Britain. It's just a little bit different.
Matt Bradley, live for us there in London. Thank you very much, Matt. I have a feeling we'll be talking again in the days to come. Appreciate it. Let's bring you back here at home because there's another record today in the markets. This time we're talking the crypto markets because Bitcoin seems to be back, hitting a high today of above $72,000 for the first time. Today's push coming after the UK made more crypto investments available. And look at this. For the past few months, you've seen Bitcoin really skyrocketing. Like since March of 2023 to now, who knows if and when it'll come back down. And like we've been telling you all year about stocks setting records, it's not just Bitcoin. You've got S&P. Up 30% for the year. Bitcoin up 250%. CNBC tech reporter Mackenzie Sigalos is joining us now. Explain why the UK approval boosted Bitcoin to these new highs, Mackenzie. What it means in plain English as to why it's such a big deal.
So, Hallie, the headline here is that it's looking like a fresh and major pipeline of cash into Bitcoin and Ethereum is coming, this time from the UK. You've got Britain's financial watchdog sort of opening the door to its own crypto exchange-traded products for the first time ever earlier today. Now, these products would only be available to institutions, not to your mom-and-pop retail investors, and that's what's key here. You know, part of what set off this run-up in Bitcoin in the first place were the U.S. spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, which have seen record flows since launching. Collectively, they've brought in nearly $60 billion in 2 months, Hallie.
Super interesting. And if you look at overall where Bitcoin has been, it was doing, we have a chart I think we can show people. Let me pull it up here. It was doing really well in 2021. Then it dropped. So there it is. There's like the spike in 2021. And I will tell you, Mackenzie, we were launching this show right around that time, and we were doing like 1 billion stories on Bitcoin. It was everywhere. Then you had a big drop, now a big resurgence again. Do you hear from experts and the folks that you're talking to, investors, concerns about the potential for another big drop-off?
Yeah, so there's definitely that fear that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are having a sort of peak bubble moment. We're definitely seeing signs of a frothy market, that surge in meme coins. Perfect example. We saw Joe Biden-inspired token called Bowden surge something like 830% in 6 hours. Dogecoin, which started as a joke, now has a market cap of $25 billion. There's also still a lot of volatility in this asset class. That price surge this morning coincided with comments from the presumptive Republican presidential nominee, Donald Trump. He said on CNBC that while he doesn't personally own any Bitcoin, he also doesn't think he would crack down on the crypto industry, which just goes to show that even a stray comment from someone who is currently not in office can help move markets.
Mackenzie Sigalos, thank you very much for that Bitcoin breakdown, if you will. Good to see you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, at least 2 people are dead, 5 others hurt after a shooting at a party in Arkansas. Officials think the shooting was related to some kind of a domestic disturbance. They say the suspected attacker also died. They're still investigating. Number 2, the spring break crackdown in Miami Beach seems to be kind of working, according to officials. Police say it is a bit calmer compared to years recently. They've made more than 140 arrests so far. Curfews, DUI checkpoints, barricades to block parking, all of that is happening. Most of that is going to stay up and last all throughout the month. Number 3, Airbnb is banning the use of security cameras inside properties on the site. The company says that up until now, properties, did you know this, were actually allowed to have indoor security cameras in common areas as long as it was disclosed to people. The new policy will go into effect at the end of next month. Number 4, the housing secretary will step down from her role later this month, according to the White House. Marcia Fudge has led the department since the early days of the Biden administration. She hasn't said why she's resigning, but that she's doing it with mixed emotions. Number 5, Virginia's governor signing a bill that bans public colleges from considering legacy when it comes to admissions. You know what that means? That essentially family connections aren't going to help applicants get into schools like UVA and William and Mary. Virginia is now the 2nd state to do this after Colorado. To an NBC News exclusive now, with the head of the NAACP asking black high school athletes not to go to college in Florida. Why? Because of the state's new policy banning DEI programs, those diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Our team getting their hands on this letter from the organization's president, Derek Johnson, saying if these institutions are unable to completely invest in those athletes, it's time they take their talents elsewhere. All of it is part of this bigger culture war battle from the state's governor, Republican Ron DeSantis, who last year signed a bill blocking public colleges and universities from using money from the state or federal government on these DEI programs. Stephen Romo is joining us now. And Stephen, we're already seeing some of the fallout from that bill. There's been like lots of chatter about this at the flagship school in Florida. Talk us through it.
Yeah, there certainly has been, Hallie. Some big names also calling this out, including University of Florida alum and Pro Footballer Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith. He actually posted about this, saying that he's utterly disgusted by the decision from the school to actually get rid of the DEI office. He went on to say to the many minority athletes at UF, please be aware and vocal about the decision by the university, who is now closing the doors on other minorities without any oversight. Now, we went on to ask Governor Ron DeSantis about this, his office, instead pointing us to a tweet, an X posting rather, from March 1st, where he said DEI is toxic and has no place in our public university. So you can see these thinkings here. It's just counter to each other. And we know that there are two very different takes on this. You mentioned the culture war, but it's having a very real impact, especially on higher education there in Florida and other states.
You look to Florida, home to some of the biggest names in college sports. You've got the Gators, for example. You've got the Seminoles, for example. They're the biggest ones you see on your screen. The University of Florida alone brings in hundreds of millions of dollars for the state. Is the expectation that athletes would follow this guidance?
Yeah, you're certainly right. Florida is a major player in Division I athletics, and that's the question. Who are these athletes going to listen to? Figures like Emmett Smith, the NAACP, or politicians fighting that culture war? You mentioned earlier the NAACP's Derek Johnson. He acknowledged that this is going to be difficult for some student athletes. Not all minority student athletes are going to have the financial freedom to actually make this decision to boycott Florida's public schools. He went on to say, writing here, the sad reality is for many black student athletes, collegiate sports may be their sole opportunity at achieving the upward mobility necessary to propel them into their rightful places in society. So we'll have to see on the ground how this is actually able to play out.
We know that this anti-DEI push is national. Is the NAACP planning to take their push national?
Yeah, that's a great question, how they will actually respond to this. We do have a map showing where we are right now in this situation. These are the states right now. We have Texas, Utah, Florida, Tennessee that have enacted laws that are anti-DEI initiatives. But look at all of the states that are considering them, more than 100 bills in this current legislative session alone. So we'll have to see exactly how it plays out. You could call it anti-woke, anti-DEI, whatever you want to call it. The very real impact this is going to have on some students, some people's lives going forward. It's a very real situation, Hallie.
Stephen Romo, thank you so much. When we come back, Princess Diana's brother speaking out in an exclusive interview about alleged abuse he faced at a British boarding school. How the school's responding in tonight's original. Plus, police in California looking for whoever's behind a smash and grab. Look at that. Pretty wild. We'll tell you what the store's owner is worried about now. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight it's an exclusive interview with Princess Diana's only brother and the godson of Queen Elizabeth. His new book sending shockwaves around the world. It's called A Very Private School, which goes into detail about the years of abuse Charles Spencer says he lived through. He sat down with our Cynthia McFadden at his family's estate in the English countryside for his first interview about it all.
It was gray and wet the day Charles Spencer took me to see the British boarding school he can't bear to remember, but can never forget, Madewell Hall.
Half country manor house and half prison camp. We used to have to walk down there to be beaten. We were locked away. We were like prisoners. We were prey to very bad people's worst instincts.
He says that the worst of those bad people was the school's headmaster, Mr. Porch.
Our headmaster was, in my view, a pedophile and a sadist. And he staffed the school himself with either people who were going along with what he was doing or were going to be mute about it.
Spencer writes in his new book, A Very Private School, that what was going on was not just bleak, but criminal.
This is not a bunch of mid-teen, late-teen kids going through a rough school. This is children being sexually, physically, and emotionally abused on a daily basis.
We sat down with Spencer, a best-selling author and historian, for his first interview about the book at Alford, home to his ancestors since 1508. With its magnificent stable and over 10,000 acres of farm and parkland. Inside, priceless paintings by Van Dyck and others. It's also his famous sister's burial place.
So much of what you write about, I think, will leave readers speechless. So contrary to everything we think about the privileged life. All the money, the home, being the godson of the Queen, which you are.
I told a friend of mine about this recently, and he said, I just can't believe you weren't protected, as if coming from this incredibly privileged background somehow would be a protection against pedophiles and sadists. But there is no protection against those sorts of people.
Despite all the family's wealth and status, as a child, he was particularly vulnerable. I mean, your mother left the family when you were 2.
Yes, that was a big bombshell. Actually, I can remember the moment when I was told that my mother would be home soon by the housekeeper. I could tell, like children can instinctively, that this was a well-meaning lie. I knew she wasn't coming back.
His sister Diana became his protector. He still has the little red coat he wore standing next to her at the local day school they attended together.
My first day there, the headmistress said Diana wouldn't settle in the classroom. And she said, go on, go and check on him. And Diana ran out and came and looked into my classroom to see I was okay. And then she came back and said to the headmistress, he's fine.
But by 8, he'd be on his own at Madewell. He says now that he was trying to be brave in this photo taken with Diana the day he left, but that his eyes stung with tears.
Everyone went to schools like I did. It's a sort of upper class tradition. And the most important code of this very flawed regime that I was part of was never to tell tales.
The secrets the 75 boys at Madewell, ages 8 to 13, kept were dark.
Every week, at least half a dozen would be whipped with a cane, and we all had showers together after sports. And you could see the blood, the split skin. And I have friends now who, a contemporary of mine, who is also 59, and he still has the scars on his buttocks from the last time he was beaten was in 1977.
How could the parents not have asked questions?
I have a theory. So the old money there sort of thought, well, this is going to make my son tougher and more successful. And then people who had made money more recently thought, well, this is what they do, and we want to be part of this set.
Abuse came from some of the teachers, too.
There was one particularly violent master, and he caught me by myself in a changing room going out to play cricket, and he just grabbed me and threw me over his knee, and cricket boots have spikes on them, metal spikes, and he beat me and puncturing my behind.
But what has truly haunted him was being sexually abused at the age he was in this portrait, 11. The predator, he says, a young woman, a member of the staff, charged with taking care of the young boys.
She would come round to my bed when others were asleep and kiss me, you know, French kiss, for ages. And it was so, if I was 17, 18, it would be a different thing, but I was 11. It was so confusing.
He says kissing became more intense fondling, and that she was sexually abusing several other boys and having intercourse with at least 2 of them.
I mean, I'm embarrassed to say it was thrilling, especially in an emotional desert such as that place was. But of course, it was terrible. She pretended she was going to have to leave early to keep us all on tenterhooks, really. And I remember cutting myself as a sort of, I thought if I hurt myself enough, then God will let her stay. And the completion of this seduction and perversion by this older lady came about when I was 12. I had not had sexual intercourse with the predator, and I was in Italy, staying in a hotel, and spotted what had been identified by my mother and stepfather as a prostitute outside. And I took my pocket money, and I lost my virginity to a prostitute.
Who's the first person you ever told what had happened to you?
A therapist when I was about 42.
You kept this inside?
Yes. And he said, whisper to me one thing you've never told anyone. And I said I was sexually abused by a woman when I was a child.
Over the 5 years he took to write the book, he talked to dozens of other students. Many told him about their own suffering.
Everyone I've spoken to who had a particularly bad experience at the school, they haven't told anyone. I mean, 2 of the people I spoke to, one was raped at the age of 9 at this school, and the other was appallingly physically abused. They hadn't told their wives. They were in their mid-50s.
He dedicates the book to Buzz.
That was the nickname I had in my family before I went to Madewell. And that was the boy who had part of him snuffed out during those 5 years at the school. So I wanted to reconnect with the carefree, happy little guy I was before I was sent to this place.
Cynthia is joining us now. Cynthia, talk about the school, how they're responding to some of the incredibly disturbing charges leveled here by Charles Spencer.
Well, first, to be clear, he's making charges about the time that he was there, which was in the 1970s, between 72 and 77. The school is taking this very seriously. They have already called authorities. Now, the way it works in Britain is there is a designated authority to call in case you are aware of a child potentially having been harmed. They have already made contact with that. And through us, they gave us a statement saying, please, if anyone else has further information, they should report to that authority or to the police. We will follow their guidance referring to that authority. What we do from this point, we would encourage anyone with similar experiences to come forward and contact those officials or the police. So they are taking this very seriously.
Clearly. Cynthia, thank you so much for sharing that reporting. We'll talk with you again, I know, later on tonight for a look behind the scenes at what went into this interview and how you brought it to us. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. NBC covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Southern Bureau, officials say at least 5 people are dead after a small plane crashed in Virginia. It crashed in the woods near an airport, then caught on fire, according to the FAA. They're still looking into what happened. Also out of our Southern Bureau, police releasing some pretty disturbing video. Look at this. Road rage in Florida. So that's a motorcycle on the right. That's a car on the left. They're racing. All of a sudden, the driver of the car, swerves, slams into that motorcycle. Obviously, the motorcyclist was very badly hurt. Just terrible to look at. Police are looking for the driver of the car, obviously. And out of our Western Bureau, police are looking for whoever's behind this smash and grab in California. Look at this. 3 people entering a jewelry store. They show up with hammers. They're smashing the heck out of everything. The owner of the store says they targeted the cases with gold and with diamonds. He's not sure yet how much they took, but he says he's worried his store just will not recover. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. Dozens of people injured on a flight from Australia to New Zealand after what LATAM Airlines called a strong shake during the flight. Strong shake, to say the least. Look at some of the images from inside. Looks like someone was on the ground. At one point, somebody was holding their head. A couple of people, 10 passengers, 3 crew members had to go to a medical center for further treatment. They're expected to be okay, but a passenger on the flight told the BBC it felt like the plane just dropped, tossing people out of their seats. We still don't know why. That's being investigated, but the airline says it's working with officials, apologizing for any inconvenience. Speaking of airlines, the DOJ is conducting a criminal investigation into Boeing now, coming after that Alaska Airlines flight back in January lost a door plug, according to a person familiar with the matter. That's after that piece blew off the plane in midair not long after takeoff from Portland. Remember this? You had people just like totally stunned here. The plane went safely back to the airport, and incredibly, nobody was hurt. As we reported last month, safety investigators found the Boeing plane flying that night left the factory missing at least 3 crucial boats that, in theory, might have kept that door from coming off. NBC's Tom Costello is following this one for us. One day, I'd like to have you on for us to talk about a plane that worked, and we can, contextually.
A plane
thousands of them,
yesterday.
all of them, right? It's so rare that we talk about these kinds of moments, but when we do, they're really high profile. And this door plug issue has freaked people out. Now there's an investigation. That's not unexpected, right? Like, this was not unexpected that this would be happening.
Right. So a criminal investigation is normal whenever there is a very serious incident. Clearly, this is a serious incident. We're talking about the Alaska Airlines plane, the MAX 9, that had the door plug blow out in January over Portland, Oregon. And now there's some history that we've got to get into here. Why is the DOJ investigating? Here's why. You may recall it was 2018 and 2019. We had 2 fatal MAX 8 crashes overseas, 346 people killed in total. As a part of the investigation into those crashes, keep the graphic up, we'll explain this. The Boeing company had to enter into a deferred criminal prosecution agreement with justice saying, if you keep your nose clean, if you don't have any more problems, then we will drop the criminal prosecution. However, you got to keep your nose clean. All right, fast forward to January 24. Look what happened, a blowout, and by Boeing's own admission, a total breakdown in quality control at Boeing. And we know, among other things, investigations into misdrilled holes in the fuselages, et cetera, et cetera. So the question for criminal prosecutors now is, has Boeing violated the terms of that agreement, the deferred criminal prosecution agreement, stemming from those original MAX 8 crashes overseas because of what's happened with the door plug? And if that's the case, they failed to keep their word, and now the criminal prosecution may even originate with the MAX 8 crashes 4 and 5 years ago.
So what does this mean for Boeing, not just legally, but reputationally as well?
Listen, I just talked to an aviation expert today who his whole life is in this field. It's a mess. Boeing's a mess. Wow. And that's the problem. Take a look at what's happened to its stock price. That gives you one sense of how Wall Street right now is viewing the problems of Boeing, down 23.5% just year to date. Since that original Lion Air crash in Indonesia, down 45%. The problems are not limited to the MAX 8 or the MAX 9 or the 787 with weather problems or the 777 or the KC-135 military tanker. They've even got problems with their spacecraft that is supposed to have already gone to the space station. It still hasn't gotten there. Maybe we're hoping it goes in April because NASA needs Boeing space to deliver to the station. Boeing's got they got quality control problems across their businesses, plural. But listen, never bet against Boeing. They have been the backbone of this country's economy for 100 years. They clearly need to get things back in order.
Tom Costello, we're glad to have you here breaking it all down for us. Thank you. It's good to see you. A lot more to get to here on the show, including Christina Applegate opening up about her MS fight in her first extended interview. What we know about this disease that affects more women than men and how to treat it. Next. Christina Applegate today opening up about her battle with multiple sclerosis in her first extended interview since she was diagnosed 3 years ago. You see Applegate there, who's 52, sitting alongside actress Jamie Lynn Sigler, who's been living with MS since she was just 20 years old. Just last month, remember, Applegate got a standing O during her surprise appearance at the Emmys. There she is, walking onto stage, giving us a better sense of a disease that affects nearly 1 million people in this country, with women more likely than men, as much as 3 times more likely than men to be diagnosed. Dr. Mario Ramirez is joining us now. Thanks for being on with us. Talk about what it means to have somebody, a celebrity, a star like Christina Applegate, shining such a light onto MS.
Yeah, hi, Hallie. Thanks for having me. You know, I think it's so important to have folks like Christina up there talking about their diagnosis. You know, so often when folks come into the emergency department, they don't know exactly what the disease is. You know, sometimes they know somebody who has the disease, and that's really what's tricky about this. It has a wide range of symptoms and signs that people can show, and it takes a very different course in a lot of people. And so, you know, I think when folks like Miss Applegate can get up and talk about their diagnosis and what they're experiencing, that gives people in the general public something to anchor onto, and it helps them understand that they're not alone in their diagnosis.
There are ways to treat MS, but there's not a cure, at least not yet, right? So where do things stand on that front?
So it's very mixed. You're right that there are medicines and different therapies that we have. Usually when people come into the emergency department and I see them, they're having an acute flare of their multiple sclerosis. And for those patients, the treatment is usually high-dose IV steroids or sometimes coming in for a blood treatment called plasmapheresis. For those patients who are not necessarily having an acute attack, though, there are other oral medicines that they take in conjunction with the advice of a neurologist. But each of those medicines have different side effects, and they're not right for every patient. And it really varies by patient and the number of relapses that they have each year. So it's a pretty complex landscape.
It sure is. Dr. Ramirez, we're glad to have you on, especially understanding what it takes to treat somebody with MS. Really appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour. Coverage picks up right now. We are coming on the air with those dangerous and deadly winds, knocking down power lines, causing trees to crash into houses. Look at that, making travel a mess for millions. We're live in the Northeast with the delays triggering big problems for spring break travel this week. Also new tonight, President Biden calling out Donald Trump on the campaign trail. as a Mar-a-Lago employee talks about one of the former president's legal cases for the first time. More on Mr. Trump's legal issues coming up. Plus, a new sense of urgency in Haiti tonight over the violence that is continuing to batter that country. What we're hearing from the Secretary of State after an urgent meeting in the Caribbean that's just wrapping up. Plus, the New Jersey senator pleading not guilty today on new charges that could cost him his seat. And in tonight's backstory, our Cynthia McFadden tells us all about her exclusive interview with Princess Diana's brother. We'll go behind the scenes on how he opened up to her on the abuse he says he faced in school later in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight we start with deadly and dangerously strong winds slamming the Northeast. It's taken out power. It's delaying flights. One man now dead in Pennsylvania after a big tree came crashing down on his home. You see it here. It just destroyed this part of it. It is so scary to look out here, especially because it happened in the middle of the night. No warning. 2 other people inside managed to get out safely. Trees are down all across the Northeast, falling onto cars like you see here, falling onto power lines. Nearly 150,000 people are in the dark. 50 million of us under wind alerts from Maine to North Carolina. And then look at this. These lines at some airports in the New York City area, at Newark and LaGuardia. Oof, you don't want to be stuck in this. Ground delays up to 2 hours because of how intensely gusty it is. That strong wind coming on the heels of a wild weekend of weather. Lots of rain turning roads to rivers like you see here in New Hampshire. Tornadoes ripping off roofs, tearing down trees, destroying houses. This is in Alabama. And then in some other towns like in Willington, Connecticut, look at it. Snow in March on the ground. Meteorologist Bill Cairns is standing by. But Aaron McLaughlin is at LaGuardia Airport for us tonight. Timing here is interesting. Big spring break week is beginning for a lot of people across the country, but the wind is making it way harder to fly. Talk us through all of it.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. There have been travel impacts. Let's pull up the numbers. According to FlightAware, as of 4:30 p.m. Eastern, there were some 3,300 delays, and more than 100 cancellations. Now, of those 3,300 delays, 561 delays recorded here at LaGuardia Airport, and passengers telling us that they are frustrated and inconvenienced. Take a listen.
I just hope we make it home one time. I don't want to stay here another night.
It's delayed about an hour, and I'm pretty ready to get home, so it's a little inconvenient.
Now, Hallie, you also pointed out the number of trees that were down as a result of these very high gusts of wind. But let's talk about the construction. Let's pull up a tweet from New York City Buildings tweeting out today, pointing to 2 incidents where construction fences were not properly secured and the high winds sent them flying into nearby pedestrians. Now, it's unclear from that tweet the condition of those pedestrians, if they were wounded or not. But this is a potentially deadly situation. I was speaking to state officials. They say wind is nothing to mess with. It is important to take precautions. State officials also pointing to just the extremes that we've experienced this winter, from really wet weather. This is in the top 10 wettest winters in New York State, tri-state rather, history. But also we saw frigid temperatures over the weekend. And then later this week, we're expecting to see unseasonably warm temperatures. And state officials are pointing to climate change, saying that this is the new norm. Hallie.
Aaron McLaughlin live for us there in New York. Thank you. Let's bring in meteorologist Bill Cairns now. Okay, so as the sun goes down, the wind will start to abate, right?
Yes.
But that's not the end of it, because the weather whiplash that we've seen all week long may not be going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, areas that just got snow are going to be 60 degrees by the middle of the week. So, yeah, I'm talking about you in northern New England, especially in the mountainous areas. So the wind's coming down. We just lost a lot of our advisories here in central Pennsylvania. And you'll notice dramatically drops as soon as the sun sets. And then we'll get rid of the rest of the advisories. But New York has been in the 30s lately. D.C.'s at 32. So it's not fun flying and landing and all this stuff. Albany's still one of the higher gusts at 48. It's even higher than the water area. So it looks like interior New England, especially at elevation, still dealing with some strong winds, maybe some isolated additional power outages all day long. Newark and LaGuardia have been a mess. The other airports have been doing a little bit better. So what's next? Well, we've had record high temperatures today. It's been in the 60s and 70s in the northern plains. That warm air is going to start to head to the east. We won't see record highs, but it'll be noticeably warmer than it's been. And then all our attention late this week, especially Wednesday night, all day Thursday into Friday, will be in areas of the Four Corner region for snow, and then more severe weather as we go throughout the end of this week. So As far as the snow goes, this could be the biggest snowstorm of the winter season for Denver, potentially. Right now, we have you in heavy snow. It looks like a heavy, wet snow. We could deal with power outages somewhere in the range of 6 to 12 inches, but at least one of our computer models has it, 15 to 20. So we'll pinpoint that a little better for you tomorrow as the event gets a little closer. And then the severe weather, that's going to wait until it looks like Thursday. And once again, we're going to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, heading up here near Fort Smith, southern portions of Arkansas, and a little bit here of Louisiana. But we'll have to watch this. This could be even potential some tornadoes later this week, too. So this is we just got done with a powerful spring storm, as you showed in the beginning. And this next one will be, equally as powerful, but for the middle of the country, not the East Coast.
Bill Cairns, thank you very much for keeping an eye on that one. We'll talk again, I am sure. Tonight, it is a split-screen campaign moment as the longest general election in a generation gets going for real. You're about to see President Biden on the campaign trail in New Hampshire, his first visit to the state in 2 years, slamming former President Trump and Republicans for suggesting cuts to Social Security and Medicare could be on the table.
If anyone tries to cut Social Security, Medicare, or raise retirement age again, I will stop them. But the bottom line is, he's still at it. I'm never going to allow that to happen.
Listen, this is a big week for the president, trying to prove his stamina by hitting some swing states he's going to have to win to have a big election day come November. As part of this full court press, you've got his cabinet crisscrossing the country over the next couple of weeks. You see there all the places they're going to, just 24 hours ahead of what we think could be the night that both he and Mr. Trump could clinch their party nominations. And Mr. Trump tonight, he might be trying to keep himself out of court, at least for now, with a new filing from his attorneys looking to delay that New York State hush money trial coming up in 2 weeks until after the Supreme Court hears arguments on presidential immunity in April. We may not know the answer to that till mid-June. The backdrop, some new numbers after the State of the Union showing a three-way polling split on who Americans think will do a better job as president. A third say President Biden, a third say former President Trump, and a third say neither of them. Garrett Haake is joining us now. Let's start with the president going on offense, hitting Mr. Trump on entitlements to the point that you've got the Trump team kind of trying to, what do you want to call it, clarify, walk back, soften, pick your language.
Yeah, look, I think the Biden team feels like they can maybe move some of those 30% on the neither category back onto Team Biden by focusing on this issue of entitlements, which has always been a good political issue for Democrats, and one on which Donald Trump stepped on a proverbial rake today on CNBC, kind of openly musing about how he might cut or save money around Social Security and other entitlements. Let's listen to what he had to say and then explain what a mess it caused for him.
There is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also the theft and the bad management of entitlements, tremendous bad management of entitlements. There's tremendous amounts of things, numbers of things you can do.
The Trump campaign tried to clarify that those things and numbers and tremendous amounts of them were really about cutting waste and fraud. But Donald Trump's not provided any specific plan to do that in in any of his 3 presidential campaigns, nor did he address it as president. So it's kind of hard to know what exactly he was talking about. The Biden campaign's not interested in the nuance here. They see Donald Trump, Social Security, cuts, and they're going to go on the attack. We saw it from the president today, and I suspect we'll continue to see it, including from the White House, where they sort of try to stay out of things political, to follow various laws related to how White House staffers are supposed to handle this. But even a spokesperson at the White House today kind of taking a slender bite at the apple on this issue.
Fair, Garrett, considering how popular, right, Social Security is for folks. Part of this, too, as we stick with policy for a second here, has to do with some of the areas where there might be commonality between President Biden and former President Trump. And I know commonality is not a word that we talk about often between these two, but it also has a nexus to another beat that you cover, one of your other jobs, which is covering Congress, this idea that maybe something should be done about TikTok. As you know, it is wildly popular with younger folks and millennials, by the way, who make up a large portion of TikTok users. But politicians don't like it very much. Let me play what Mr. Trump had to say about this.
I could have banned TikTok. I had it banned just about. I could have gotten it done. But the thing I don't like is that without TikTok, you can make Facebook bigger. And I consider Facebook to be an enemy of the people.
It's an interesting shift from him on this, Garrett.
Yeah, it's funny, Hallie, because here you have Donald Trump, who first proposed banning TikTok, now saying he's not that sure he wants to do it, in part because he doesn't want to help Facebook, who is sort of politically feuding with. Then you have Joe Biden, who's overseeing and said he would sign a TikTok ban, while his campaign is actively on TikTok using it to reach young voters. So both of these men have conflicted stances about what's becoming the most popular social media app in the country, and where lawmakers in both parties seem poised to force this vote, which would either force divestment or a ban on TikTok, which everybody seems to sort of want for national security purposes, but also hate for their own individual purposes. It's a messy issue, Hallie, but again, Congress is arguably more united than either of the presidential candidates on this. How's that for a weird statement to say?
Yeah,
and they seem pretty clear on moving towards this vote on Wednesday.
That's an Earth 2 line right there, Garrett. From the political to the legal now for the former president, because there's been a flurry of activity late today, including this brand new interview from over on CNN with so-called Trump employee number 5, talking about conversations that he had with the special counsel on the classified documents case. To remind people, this is the one where the former president's accused of bringing these documents from the White House to his home at Mar-a-Lago, top secret documents, etc. First time we've heard from this person referenced in this indictment. Let me play a little bit of it.
For me, I'm just thinking, the former president, he has a lot of stuff he likes to lug around with him. I never would have thought it was anything like what we see now.
Classified documents.
Yeah, I mean.
So he says he didn't know. All those boxes, like boxes that we saw piled up in bathrooms at Mar-a-Lago and ballrooms, etc. Interesting. You can see some of the photos there. Interesting to hear somebody in the former president's, like, semi-inner circle come out and talk about this.
Yeah, this is incredibly rare, Hallie. I mean, we've known about these folks who, you know, individual 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We who've been covering this case have identified some of them along the way, but not this man, Brian Butler, who was basically a valet for the Trump organization, the actual organization that runs Mar-a-Lago. He started a car service for people who were coming and going. And in his interview with CNN, he talks about Walt Nauta, the Trump aide, asking to borrow a large car in part to transport these boxes. So what we've seen in the past has been kind of unbending loyalty from Donald Trump's employees in this case, the kind of thing that has gotten some of them in legal trouble. Here, a break from that, testimony that's proven very important to investigators. Another big hearing in this case on Thursday. We'll see if this one is likely to move forward anytime soon, or if it gets bogged down in this immunity question into the summer or perhaps fall too, Hallie.
Garrett Haake, live for us, covering a lot that happened late today. Garrett, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Also, in the last couple of hours, some red flags from the Secretary of State on Haiti. Right now in Jamaica, he's praising leaders there for taking the lead on what one source calls a growing sense of urgency given the crisis in Haiti. Watch.
Today's meeting on Haiti, so critical, bringing CARICOM together, is testament to Jamaica's leadership in the hemisphere that we share, leadership at a critical moment for Haiti, but also a critical moment for all of us.
Remember, the Haitian prime minister faces calls to step down. He's in Puerto Rico right now on U.S. soil, partly because of violent scenes like this one from March 4th. This is the attack on Haiti's airport. We told you about it when it happened, with gangs overrunning the Haitian capital, including near the U.S. embassy. Haiti's military is beefing up its presence after now the U.S. military helped some embassy staff get out of the country. Marissa Parro is following this one for us live from Miami. Not a lot of details yet from Secretary Blinken, but the big message is that this is a crisis. It has to be addressed now, that this is urgent. Fair?
Completely fair, Hallie. And just to kind of underscore how important this is, you have people who were already in a dire situation. Think about how much turmoil this country has seen, even over the last decade, over the last several decades. And so you have people that there's fears of starvation even. You have no way to really get in or out for those people who are afraid. You saw those violent scenes playing out on your screen just moments ago. The airports are currently shut down. You have the port, which brings in supplies by sea, that is currently being controlled by the gangs. And so there's a lot of questions on being able to get supplies in or out, and of course people being able to get in or out, certainly not by air unless you're evacuated by a military operation like we saw with some of those embassy personnel, Hallie. But you have all of those fears that are escalating the urgency here. And so this is already a sensitive situation, because when we talk about how to help, there's a lot of concern about if a country like the United States gets involved, what that would due to this very, very delicate situation. You have gangs that do not want U.S. involvement, and so there's a lot of fear, not just from some Haitians I've heard from on the ground here in Miami, Haitians who are on the ground in Haiti, but also humanitarian workers who say that if the U.S. gets involved, it could make the situation even worse politically and escalate this to a whole new level, Hallie.
Especially when you have concerns now from some of these nearby countries like the Dominican Republic.
Right. And so there's already been tensions between Haiti and the Dominican Republic for quite some time. But right now, what we've seen over the last week, thousands trying to flee the border. We just talked about how it's impossible to get out by air right now. The airports are shut down. That port is being controlled by the gangs in power. And so fleeing across the border by foot is really the only way to even have a chance of getting out. But, you know, the Dominican Republic, obviously in a precarious situation there, trying to figure out how to help as well as protecting their own border here. So that is a big part of what today's meeting is about, frankly, because you have these leaders of these Caribbean nations trying to address a crisis that's happening in Haiti while also trying to keep their own countries safe at the same time and not escalate an already horrible situation from getting even worse, Hallie.
Marissa Parra, live for us in Miami. Thank you. To New Jersey now, where Senator Bob Menendez there is gearing up to fight even more federal charges tonight, after he and his wife both pleaded not guilty to charges they obstructed the federal investigation against them. This is probably the last step before they head to trial in early May over allegations they accepted bribes in exchange for favors. These new obstruction charges, coming from what prosecutors argue is the Menendez's push to lie about payments to buy a new Mercedes. Just one of the things investigators say they took as bribes. A majority of Menendez's Democratic colleagues in the Senate, they want him to step down. That's significant, with the 2024 Senate map looking like a toss-up right now. NBC's Tom Winter is following this one for us. So, Tom, the Menendezes are basically saying these were loans, not a bribe. Walk us through that.
Right, Hallie. So federal prosecutors are saying quite the opposite. They're saying you invented this idea that these were loan repayments only after you learned that there was a federal criminal investigation into you when we searched your home and we started sending out subpoenas over half of northern New Jersey, it feels like. So in the course of that investigation, they said that they started to make some representations to their lawyers, who then went to federal prosecutors and say, hey, these are checks, and on these checks it says loan repayment. There's nothing illegal about that. Of course they're going to repay those loans. And federal prosecutors say, oh, not so fast. We've developed evidence. And then recently, with the guilty plea and cooperation of Jose Uribe, one of the businessmen who was charged alongside the Menendezes, in what he has told federal prosecutors happened, they now say out and out, these were bribes. And this idea that you tried to tell us that they were loan repayments, well, they argue that's obstruction of justice.
If people are like, well, wait a second, I thought that Bob Menendez was already facing charges, right? Today's arraignment is the third time that we're seeing more added onto this indictment, which Menendez called piling on. But how normal is that? What does that say about the changing scope of this investigation? Give us a gut check.
Right. I think actually the scope is kind of there, right? So the guardrails of where this investigation is. It's just that prosecutors are exploring the full length of this road of conduct they allege is illegal and is criminal. So in the course of their investigation, they've developed new information, more information. It's possible additional people have come forward. And then, of course, they've had a guilty plea and a cooperator. So is it unusual? Well, it is slightly unusual that we would have this. And you're looking at one of the photographs in one of the additional superseding indictments. On the other hand, you have a very active federal case. You have the FBI involved. And so it makes sense that other people would come forward and you would start to learn new information. I think the idea that they're flat out calling these bribes, Hallie, you know, so often people say these politicians, they get all this money. People are paying them off. And, you know, people come up to me when I'm outside of this building and just ask me about this. Those are typically legal. The idea that a sitting United States senator is allegedly receiving straight up gifts in cash in exchange for their official acts is something that prosecutors obviously are focusing on. And that's, I think, a big reason why you're seeing them really fully explore the level of conduct they say they have against Bob Menendez.
Tom Winter, thank you for that. Overseas now, a tense and somber start to the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, with no real sign of a ceasefire in Gaza and a lot of concern right now that fighting could happen in holy sites in Jerusalem. The backdrop of this, more and more tension between world leaders, too, with President Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seeming to ratchet up some of the rhetoric here. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu doubling down on the operations he's leading in Gaza after President Biden said Netanyahu is hurting Israel more than helping. Raf Sanchez has more from Jerusalem.
The Muslim holy month of Ramadan has arrived here in Jerusalem, but it has not brought the ceasefire that President Biden was hoping for. There is a real heaviness in the city right now. This is supposed to be a time of celebration, being with family, of contemplation. Instead, our team spoke earlier to a 38-year-old Palestinian man. He says this is the most painful Ramadan he can remember, as people here see those absolutely searing images of war and potential famine coming out of Gaza. There is a lot of concern that the violence in Gaza could spread to Jerusalem, especially around the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It is the third holiest site in Islam. It is a place that tens of thousands of people flock to for prayers during the month of Ramadan. Israel's government says it is not imposing strict restrictions on the mosque at this time, despite calls from the far right of Benjamin Netanyahu's government to do so. But we have seen some clashes with police already. We've seen some younger men being turned away from the mosque so far. It comes amid tensions between the U.S. and Israel. President Biden over the weekend saying Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's leadership is hurting Israel more than it's helping it. The Prime Minister responding today saying he doesn't know what the president meant by that, but that any daylight between the U.S. and Israel is not helpful, both in terms of Israel's war against Hamas, but also the strength of its position at the negotiating table as it negotiates, try to get that ceasefire, to get hostages out and humanitarian aid in. Now, the first ship in Cyprus due to sail for Gaza to try to open up that maritime corridor, getting aid in by sea, says the charity behind it says they are ready to go, but there is a diplomatic holdup. Not clear what that holdup is right now. A U.S. military ship also leaving its port in Virginia over the weekend as part of President Biden's instruction to build a temporary pier off of Gaza to ramp up humanitarian aid. U.S. officials say that operation is going to take 2 months at least. And the UN and other aid agencies are saying people are on the brink of famine in Gaza right now.
Our thanks to Raf Sanchez for his reporting there, even as in just the last couple of minutes, President Biden apparently came and talked about the situation there. He was asked if there was a so-called come to Jesus meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu scheduled. President Biden said no, there is not at the moment. We'll have more on that as it develops. Plus, coming up, more on the search in Switzerland, how officials are trying to find a missing skier near the country's most famous mountain. Plus, why the president of Ukraine is hitting back at the Pope. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, at least 2 people are dead, 5 others hurt after a shooting at a party in Arkansas. Officials think it was related to some kind of a domestic disturbance and say the suspected attacker also died. They're still looking into what exactly happened. Number 2, you know that spring break crackdown in Miami Beach? Well, officials say it may be working, at least for now. Seems like things are more calm compared to years past. Police have made something like 140 arrests so far. They've got curfews in place, DUI checkpoints, barricades to block off parking. You see some of that there. It's all going to last, most of them, throughout the month. Number 3, The Body Shop shutting down its stores in the U.S. after filing for bankruptcy last week. You know this place? It's like a beauty, makeup, candle type spot. It's still going to have some shops in the UK and Canada. The company basically collapsed last month, with administrators pointing to mismanagement and what they called a tough retail landscape. The spokesperson has not yet responded to our request for comment. Number 4, Bitcoin smashing its previous record today, hitting a new high of $72,000 plus for the first time ever. That's coming after the UK made more crypto investments available. You've seen Bitcoin just skyrocket recently after having a bit of a dip about a year ago. Number 5, the Virginia governor signing a bill today that bans public colleges from considering legacy when it comes to admissions. It means family connections won't help you get into like UVA or to William and Mary, some of those public Virginia schools. Virginia becomes the 2nd state to do this after Colorado. Let's take you overseas now, where Kate Middleton, late today, was seen leaving Windsor Castle with her husband for what the palace calls a private appointment. You see the picture here. So that's obviously shot through the back seat, through the window. And if you zoom in, you can see looks like she's maybe on her phone. She's kind of looking away. She's got her head turned. This is coming just hours after she apologized for editing the first official picture we've seen of her in months. was meant to silence all the rumors about her. It basically backfired, with the world's biggest news agencies putting out a notice, don't roll the pictures anymore because it looks doctored. That's why we have that big red slash mark through it. So what's wrong with it? If you're a Photoshop sleuth, well, the AP says the alignment is off there on the sleeve of her daughter's hand. The New York Times says the zipper and hair on Kate are misaligned. And then the edges of the tile down on the bottom by her son sort of repeating in a way that looks manipulated. Kate, in a statement, said she occasionally experiments with editing. She wanted to express her apologies, she says, for any confusion the family photograph we shared yesterday caused. Kensington Palace tells NBC News it's not going to release the original picture. Matt Bradley is following all of it from outside Buckingham Palace. The whole point of releasing this photograph, it seems, and we don't know this for sure, but it seems as though the point was to silence some of the speculation about Kate's surgery and her long recovery. Instead, it has merely inflamed those questions now with this whole photo controversy.
Yeah, there's kind of an elegance in how badly this went. You know, it just backfired so perfectly on the royal family and on the palace. This isn't a big issue. This isn't a big scandal, but there's a lot of questions out there. Some of them, you know, in the realm of conspiracy theories, some of them clearly jokes, but others kind of legitimate. I mean, how long does it take to recover from a surgery like this? Why has she not been seen in public at all? Why is she, you know, basically, you know, taking such a side role in this when we're seeing the king himself, who was diagnosed with cancer, walking around, talking about his condition, talking to survivors, talking to patients, making a big presentation about his cancer and about cancer worldwide, turning it into a political cause. That's not what we're seeing with Kate Middleton. It really is a stark contrast, considering Kate's a lot younger than the king, and you know that was kind of the old mentality, was privacy in the royal family. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Now it seems as though this palace is trying to get on board with the new social media age, but they're sort of doing it with half measures, and you can see how they did it here. They probably are going to be a little bit once bitten, twice shy to do this again, especially, as I mentioned in the last hour, taking their cues straight from social media. You give social media an inch, they're going to take a mile.
Yeah, I mean, what's also interesting here is the way that this was front page news in so many spots in the UK, even before we found out that it was edited. The question is, what do these papers look like tomorrow morning, right? The recovery from the palace. I mean, presumably, and hopefully Kate recovers. She appears in public right around Easter, which comes up, I think, end of this month, first weekend in April. We'll see her. You know, that would put an end to some of the speculation here. Is that what it's going to take?
I think so, but you know how things go. I mean, you've been on the butt end of this, and so have I. When it comes to social media, just the feverish pace, when things get going, they really get going. And in a way, when it comes to conspiracy theories, the thing about a conspiracy theory is it can't be disproven. It won't be. There's always going to be people who are going to want to hold on to that. We see that in politics stateside. You cover it all the time. There's people who just will not believe, no matter how much evidence you provide. And we're starting to see that happen here. You know, there's a lot of talk about the royal family worldwide. It's gossip, less conspiratorial.
Yeah.
Now I think we're starting to see the conspiratorial side of things when it comes to the royal family, and I don't think they're going to like it.
Matt Bradley, live for us there in London. Matt, thank you. America's intel leaders out with a new warning tonight. They say our adversaries want to meddle. They want to mess with the 2024 election, and they could use AI to do it. Take a listen as the director of national intelligence is sounding the alarm just in the last couple of hours on the Hill. Watch.
The threat of malign actors exploiting these tools and technologies to undercut U.S. interests and democracy is particularly potent as voters go to the poll.
Those officials up on the Hill as the intel community releases its annual roundup of some of the places, the countries, the groups, et cetera, that could threaten the U.S. NBC's Ken Delaney is following this for us. For a national security reporter like yourself, Ken, the worldwide threats hearing is always major news. And this year we're seeing the usual names: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. They've all got their own interests. But the question, right, is what happens in a pivotal and critical election year like the one we're in now?
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. That was one of the striking things that these intelligence officials told members of Congress today, which is that all three of those countries that you mentioned are prone to be interfering in our politics. And when they say interfere in the election, they don't mean hacking into voting machines and changing the votes. What they mean is manipulating or trying to manipulate public opinion through fake social media accounts, online personas, and the new worry is artificial intelligence, which these officials said was kind of a new vector for these countries to play online and to try to sow divisions in American politics. And China in particular, they said, has interfered in the 2022 midterms and is likely to interfere, if not in the presidential election, perhaps in congressional and state and local races, because what they're trying to do is punish critics of China and boost people who support Chinese policy, Hallie.
Ken Delunian, super interesting. Thank you very much for keeping an eye on that one for us tonight. To an NBC News exclusive now, with the head of the NAACP urging black high school athletes not to go to college in Florida. That's what they're encouraging these athletes to do. Why? Because of the state's new policy banning DEI programs. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Our team getting a look at this letter from the organization's president saying if these institutions are unable to completely invest in those athletes, it's time they take their talents elsewhere. All of it part of this culture war battle from Ron DeSantis, the state's governor, Republican, who last year signed a bill blocking any public colleges and universities from using money from the state or feds on these DEI programs. Stephen Romo is joining us now. Stephen, we're already seeing some of the fallout from that bill. There's been like lots of chatter about this at the flagship school in Florida. Talk us through it.
Yeah, there certainly has been, Hallie. Some big names also calling this out, including University of Florida alum and Pro Footballer Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith. He actually posted about this, saying that he's utterly disgusted by the decision from the school to actually get rid of the DEI office. He went on to say to the many minority athletes at UF, please be aware and vocal about the decision by the university, who is now closing the doors on other minorities without any oversight. Now, we went on to ask Governor Ron DeSantis about this, his office, instead pointing us to a tweet, an X posting rather, from March 1st, where he said DEI is toxic and has no place in our public university. So you can see these thinkings here. It's just counter to each other. And we know that there are two very different takes on this. You mentioned the culture war, but it's having a very real impact, especially on higher education there in Florida and other states.
You look to Florida, home to some of the biggest names in college sports. You've got the Gators, for example. You've got the Seminoles, for example. They're the biggest ones you see on your screen. The University of Florida alone brings in hundreds of millions of dollars for the state. Is the expectation that athletes would follow this guidance?
Yeah, you're certainly right. Florida is a major player in Division I athletics, and that's the question. Who are these athletes going to listen to? Figures like Emmitt Smith, the NAACP, or politicians fighting that culture war? You mentioned earlier the NAACP's Derek Johnson. He acknowledged that this is going to be difficult for some student athletes. Not all minority student athletes are going to have the financial freedom to actually make this decision to boycott Florida's public schools. He went on to say, writing here, the sad reality is for many black student athletes, collegiate sports may be their sole opportunity at achieving the upward mobility necessary to propel them into their rightful places in society. So we'll have to see on the ground how this is actually able to play out.
We know that this anti-DEI push is national. Is the NAACP planning to take their push national?
Yeah, that's a great question, how they will actually respond to this. We do have a map showing where we are right now in this situation. These are the states right now. We have Texas, Utah, Florida, Tennessee that have enacted laws that are anti-DEI initiatives. But look at all of the states that are considering them, more than 100 bills in this current legislative session alone. So we'll have to see exactly how it plays out. You can call it anti-woke, anti-DEI, whatever you want to call it. The very real impact this is going to have on some students, some people's lives going forward. It's a very real situation, Hallie.
Stephen Romo, thank you so much. So listen, spring is right around the corner, but for a lot of folks, it feels like winter never arrived, especially around the Great Lakes, where temperatures have been warmer than usual, with less ice there. Here's Jesse Kirsch with more.
Right now on the Great Lakes, something's missing: ice. This year could see the lowest average ice cover on the lakes in about 50 years. See those purple squiggles? Those are the percentages of Great Lakes ice cover over the past 50 years. The red line's the average. And down at the bottom in black, you can see this year's ice cover. Very low. 10 years ago, the Great Lakes looked like this. Now you can barely see any ice.
These are massive water systems, and they don't freeze overnight. They need a long period of below average temperatures, and we just did not see that this winter.
Scientists point to a combination of climate change, El Nino, and natural variability. Low ice levels could erode the shores and hurt fish reproduction, according to scientists. Plus, less ice can make it more dangerous to be out on the frozen lakes. This winter, the Coast Guard rescuing several people from a sheet of floating ice in Lake Erie, an issue that becomes more likely when there's less ice cover. And as the world warms up, we could have a lot more winters like this one. Jesse Kirsch, NBC News.
Our thanks to Jesse for that reporting. When we come back, a lot more to get to, including our team with an exclusive interview with Princess Diana's brother. Cynthia McFadden takes us behind the scenes on how she talked with him as he opened up about years of alleged abuse at a British boarding school. Next. Time now to get the backstory, our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into our bigger picture. And tonight, it's an exclusive interview with Princess Diana's only brother and the godson of Queen Elizabeth. His new book, sending shockwaves around the world. It's called A Very Private School, and it goes into detail about the years of alleged abuse Charles Spencer says he lived through at a prestigious British boarding school called Madewell Hall. Spencer talks about his story and the stories of the 25 former students that he's interviewed over the past 5 years. Sitting down with our Cynthia McFadden at his family's estate in the English countryside for his first interview about the book. And tonight, a piece of that interview that's not been seen anywhere else, a new clip where Spencer talks with Cynthia about why some of the parents may not have been asking questions about what was happening with their kids at the time.
There's one mother I know who came from a less privileged background, and she was so thrilled that her son was at this school that when he went home with his buttocks beaten into a bloody pulp, she quietly, for 2 weeks, took his underpants covered in blood and washed them without asking him a single question, because she felt so excited to have her son mixing with well-known families.
It's disturbing to hear, as Spencer also talks with Cynthia about an experience that has haunted him the most from his time at the boarding school, when a woman in charge of taking care of students, he says, sexually abused him. Listen.
She would come round to my bed when others were asleep and kiss me, you know, French kiss, for ages. And it was so, if I was 17, 18, it would be a different thing, but I was 11. It was so confusing.
Madewell Hall responding to NBC News in a statement, saying they've reached out to the local authorities in charge of protecting children, and that, as you see here, we will follow their guidance on what we do from this point. We would encourage anyone with similar experiences to come forward and contact those officials or the police. Again, that's Madewell Hall. Cynthia is joining us now. Some pretty stunning details that Charles Spencer is telling you. And yes, he wrote a book about it, but it's a conversation that I would imagine is still obviously difficult to have. How did you get him to talk with you here? How did you get him to be able to be vulnerable going into these details in an on-camera setting?
Well, first of all, it was a very competitive booking, Hallie, and I had an advantage, and that is that I had known his wife long before she married him. She was an amazing woman who had founded a group that worked with orphanages around the world, helping train orphanage workers, and so I had actually done a story probably 10 years ago about her and met him through that. So we had a little bit of an inside track. And truthfully, I think you'd agree with this. The luxury of time. That was a 2-hour interview. And, you know, I would say that, you know, at first it's difficult. It would be difficult for anyone to talk about this. But for a man who grew up the way that Charles Spencer did, as you learn when you read the book, where, you know, you never spoke about these kinds of things to anyone, certainly not your parents, not your family. You know, all of these young men kept their secrets. I mean, think about this. He never told anyone until he was 42 years old. A therapist leans in, he says, and said to him, "Whisper something to me you've never told anyone." So to get him to talk took a little bit of time, a little bit of coaxing. And I think the other trick to this, if you will, it's not really a trick, it's to read the book really carefully. You know, I took copious notes in the galleys of the book that I had, and authors always appreciate it if you can ask them pertinent questions. So yeah, I mean, he was ready to talk, and I happened to be lucky enough to be sitting there when he wanted to talk.
Sitting there at the family estate, as we have some pictures there of that, you sort of in this space.
There you go. Well, there we are outside Althorpe. It's 10,000 acres outside. This was it rained a good deal while we were there. This was a nice moment of sun. There's a picture of me sitting in the front hall, if you will, the black and white floor. You'll see. Yeah, there you go. Okay, this is called Wooten Hall because Wooten is the artist who painted these extraordinary pictures. This is the stable at the estate. That's the stable. I thought it was the house at first when we drove up. It's the stable. And, you know, 10,000 acres. Princess Diana, by the way, is buried at Althorpe. It's a beautiful setting in the back, which he created for her, a little island with a little memorial temple and then water around it. It's always wonderful to be there. I had been there a couple of times previously. And there's a shot, I think, of the room. Is there a shot with the green walls? It's a beautiful room.
We're going to have our team pull that up. Is that where you did the interview itself?
That's it, right there.
Yeah.
That's where we did the sit down. Yeah, beautiful.
I'm reminded, and you know this, and I think our viewers know this too, but something like this, an interview of this length, and I should note that I believe we'll have more special coverage of this interview in the week to come, Cynthia, happens with a village.
Usually, it's a really big village. My village for this was small but mighty. Jake Whitman, who I've worked with over 15 years, produced, shot, and edited this story. And I mean, it's hard enough to be good at one of those three jobs, but Jake is really a master of all of it. There he is with his faithful Bronco in the driveway as we're about to leave. You know, the crews usually come with bags and bags and bags of stuff. Jake has a few little things here and there, but he shot all that beautiful footage that you've seen in the piece. And he's a remarkable guy, and I feel very fortunate to try to keep up with him.
Cynthia McFadden and Jake Whitman, thanks to the both of you for bringing that to us. I know more tonight, later on here on NBC News Now, and more later in the week as well. We're looking forward to it. Cynthia McFadden, thank you so much.
Thank you, Hallie.
We'll be right back. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Switzerland, police say they found the bodies of 5 cross-country skiers near the country's famous Matterhorn mountain after they went missing this weekend. They're still searching for a 6th person. Officials say they got caught up in bad weather. Out of India, the government's trying to implement a new citizenship law that excludes Muslims. The rule would basically fast-track naturalization to religious minorities from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh who fled to India before 2015. It would not include Muslims who fled those countries, however. There were huge protests when this law passed a few years ago, with this move now coming weeks before the Indian elections, where the current prime minister is running for a 3rd term. And out of Ukraine, the president there is hitting back at the Pope after the Pope seemed to call on Ukraine to give up its war against Russia. In an interview, Pope Francis said Ukraine should have, quote, the courage of the white flag, his words, and should negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Ukraine's leader dismissed what the Pope said as an attempt to, as he said, mediate virtually from far away. The Kremlin also jumping in on this one, saying it's ready for talks to try to resolve its invasion of Ukraine. Dozens of people injured on a flight from Australia to New Zealand after what LATAM Airlines called a strong shake during the flight. Strong shake, to say the least. Look at some of the images from inside. Looks like someone was on the ground. At one point, somebody was holding their head. A couple of people, 10 passengers, 3 crew members had to go to a medical center for further treatment. They're expected to be okay, but a passenger on the flight told the BBC it felt like the plane just dropped, tossing people out of their seats. We still don't know why. That's being investigated, but the airline says it's working with officials, apologizing for any inconvenience. Speaking of airlines, the DOJ is conducting a criminal investigation into Boeing now, coming after that Alaska Airlines flight back in January lost a door plug, according to a person familiar with the matter. That's after that piece blew off the plane in midair not long after takeoff from Portland. Remember this? You had people just like totally stunned here. The plane went safely back to the airport, and incredibly, nobody was hurt. As we reported last month, safety investigators found the Boeing plane flying that night left the factory missing at least 3 crucial boats that, in theory, might have kept that door from coming off. NBC's Tom Costello is following this one for us. One day, I'd like to have you on for us to talk about a plane that worked, and we can, contextually,
a plane
thousands of them,
yesterday.
all of them, right? It's so rare that we talk about these kinds of moments, but when we do, they're really high profile. And this door plug issue has freaked people out. Now there's an investigation. That's not unexpected, right? Like, this was not unexpected that this would be happening.
Right. So a criminal investigation is normal whenever there is a very serious incident. Clearly, this is a serious incident. We're talking about the Alaska Airlines plane, the MAX 9, that had the door plug blow out in January over Portland, Oregon. And now there's some history that we've got to get into here. Why is the DOJ investigating? Here's why. You may recall it was 2018 and 2019. We had 2 fatal MAX 8 crashes overseas, 346 people killed in total. As a part of the investigation into those crashes, keep the graphic up, we'll explain this. The Boeing company had to enter into a deferred criminal prosecution agreement with justice saying, if you keep your nose clean, if you don't have any more problems, then we will drop the criminal prosecution. However, you got to keep your nose clean. All right, fast forward to January 24. Look what happened, a blowout, and by Boeing's own admission, a total breakdown in quality control at Boeing. And we know, among other things, investigations into misdrilled holes in the fuselages, et cetera, et cetera. So the question for criminal prosecutors now is, has Boeing violated the terms of that agreement, the deferred criminal prosecution agreement, stemming from those original MAX 8 crashes overseas because of what's happened with the door plug? And if that's the case, they failed to keep their word, and now the criminal prosecution may even originate with the MAX 8 crashes 4 and 5 years ago.
So what does this mean for Boeing, not just legally, but reputationally as well?
Listen, I just talked to an aviation expert today who his whole life is in this field. It's a mess. Boeing's a mess. Wow. And that's the problem. Take a look at what's happened to its stock price. That gives you one sense of how Wall Street right now is viewing the problems of Boeing, down 23.5% just year to date. Since that original Lion Air crash in Indonesia, down 45%. The problems are not limited to the MAX 8 or the MAX 9 or the 787 with their other problems or the 777 or the KC-135 military tanker. They've even got problems with their spacecraft that is supposed to have already gone to the space station. It still hasn't gotten there. Maybe we're hoping it goes in April because NASA needs Boeing space to deliver to the station. Boeing's got they got quality control problems across their businesses, plural. But listen, never bet against Boeing. They have been the backbone of this country's economy for 100 years. They clearly need to get things back in order.
Tom Costello, we're glad to have you here breaking it all down for us. Thank you. It's good to see you. A lot more to get to here on the show, including Christina Applegate opening up about her MS fight in her first extended interview. What we know about this disease that affects more women than men and how to treat it. Next. Christina Applegate today opening up about her battle with multiple sclerosis in her first extended interview since she was diagnosed 3 years ago. You see Applegate there, who's 52, sitting alongside actress Jamie Lynn Sigler, who's been living with MS since she was just 20 years old. Just last month, remember, Applegate got a standing O during her surprise appearance at the Emmys. There she is, walking onto stage, giving us a better sense of a disease that affects nearly 1 million people in this country, with women more likely than men. As much as 3 times more likely than men to be diagnosed. Dr. Mario Ramirez is joining us now. Thanks for being on with us. Talk about what it means to have somebody, a celebrity, a star like Christina Applegate, shining such a light onto MS.
Yeah, hi, Hallie. Thanks for having me. You know, I think it's so important to have folks like Christina up there talking about their diagnosis. You know, so often when folks come into the emergency department, they don't know exactly what the disease is. You know, sometimes they know somebody who has the disease, and that's really what's tricky about this. It has a wide range of symptoms and signs that people can show, and it takes a very different course in a lot of people. And so, you know, I think when folks like Miss Applegate can get up and talk about their diagnosis and what they're experiencing, that gives people in the general public something to anchor onto, and it helps them understand that they're not alone in their diagnosis.
There are ways to treat MS, but there's not a cure, at least not yet, right? So where do things stand on that front?
So it's very mixed. You're right that there are medicines and different therapies that we have. Usually when people come into the emergency department and I see them, they're having an acute flare of their multiple sclerosis. And for those patients, the treatment is usually high-dose IV steroids or sometimes coming in for a blood treatment called plasmapheresis. For those patients who are not necessarily having an acute attack, though, there are other oral medicines that they take in conjunction with the advice of a neurologist. But each of those medicines have different side effects, and they're not right for every patient. And it really varies by patient and the number of relapses that they have each year. So it's a pretty complex landscape.
It sure is. Dr. Ramirez, we're glad to have you on, especially understanding what it takes to treat somebody with MS. Really appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.